This is the High School Crossfire. Welcome back.
This House believes that Ubos is solely responsible for the failures in the recently concluded population census. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a clear keen at the word solely. What does it mean, one party? And what do they blame? They blame the parliament, they blame the UCC, they blame a lot of people. And why are they blaming the parliament? They say they blame the parliament, reason being it failed to fund them. But ladies and gentlemen, the 399 billion used by Ubos, who gave them their money, the parliament failed to sensitize them. They talk about UCC. Ladies and gentlemen, it comes back to the main issue. Who was meant to call out population census? Was it UCC or Ubos? And why do they blame UCC? They say UCC failed to sensitize the people. But ladies and gentlemen, that was meant to be done by Ubos. Reason being, it's an agency that was given the responsibility to carry out enumeration. What does it mean? All that is its work. Ladies and gentlemen, what do they come and blame? They also come and blame the office of Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, really blaming the office of the Prime Minister. Yet you asked for funds and you have been given. You even added for more. You even asked for more 23.7 billion for the taxation on gadgets and you were given. You even went on and added 5 days and you were given. And you still blame the office of Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, they talked about what we present in our case. We talk about poor sensitization. And ladies and gentlemen, poor sensitization was there. They are saying that UCC failed. Granted.
Do you believe that when a budget is passed, the funds are not provided immediately?
As by my knowledge, the Ubos wouldn't have carried out the funds if they didn't receive. They wouldn't have carried out sensitization if they didn't receive the funds. That means they were given the funds, but then they shouldn't blame anybody. Reason being that they were given the funds, it was their failure. Ladies and gentlemen, they come and blame the natural disasters. Natural disasters, really, let them come with statistics and show which areas were affected by natural disasters and at what percentage they affect the enumeration. Of course, it comes back to Ubos. They talk about enumerators in Weko district, an enumerated Weko district who was beaten. But what was the duty of who was in charge of providing the security to that enumerator? Of course, it was the duty of Ubos to ensure the safety of the enumerators. Ladies and gentlemen, what we bring in our case, we blame them for the gadgets that were provided by Ubos having been given the money. We also blame them for the inadequate training of the enumerators, the 9 days training of the enumerators. It was not enough, ladies and gentlemen. They also, when they talk about sensitization, they even clearly accept that the sensitization wasn't enough. And that meaning, if they clearly accept, that meaning Ubos has to be blamed because it was in charge of sensitization. Ladies and gentlemen, what do we look at? What we look at in this resolution? We want to look at who is solely responsible, who is that person, and they fail to bring that one person who is solely responsible for the population, for the failures in the population census. But instead, they provide a number of bodies of which I don't think it can bring out the meaning of solely according to the resolution. Ladies and gentlemen, putting the blame. We have a question. We have the question to team negative. Who was in charge of sensitizing the people? And if they're saying that the parliament failed, where did the Ubos get the money that they used to carry out the population census? Ladies and gentlemen, if team negative fails to come and explain the faulty gadgets that Ubos even claims, even if they fail to rebut the issue of Ubos accepting that the glitches were there, and then they come and blame the parliament, why didn't the parliament come up and accept and say, oh, why did the Ubos say that we also blame other bodies, for example, the parliament? But we have given that according to the element, Ubos states itself that we as Ubos, we are responsible for the glitches. They talk about sensitization of the people by the UCC, and we told them there was poor sensitization. They talk about inadequate funding, and we told them the parliament they were given funds. We talk about 40 gadgets, and they failed to talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, as I continue, my first farmer came and told you that what would we expect from Ubos? We expected Ubos to ensure that all individuals are counted. And what does Ubos say? Ubos says that only 99% of the population of the data has been got. Ladies and gentlemen, where is the 1%? Are they citizens of Uganda? Ladies and gentlemen, we talk about the transparency. Was the money given or used? Why do we expect transparency from Ubos? Why do they come up with 40 gadgets at the end of the day? With that, I rest my case.
In a failed system, blaming one person is like blaming one music note for a bad symphony. Resolved, this House believes that Ubos is solely responsible for the failures in the recently concluded census. Ladies and gentlemen, the farmers come and present to us a case where they say that we accepted the glitches in the newspaper now. There is a difference between accepting the glitches and taking full responsibility, sole responsibility of all the glitches that took place. We asked them a question from our first speech: does Ubos have full independence? And if Ubos does not have full independence in carrying out an activity, how can it be solely responsible for the same activity? We also, in their case, they do not actually recognize the participation of other bodies in this census, and to what extent did these bodies play their roles? Now, ladies and gentlemen, their first speaker clearly said that Ubos is under the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. So, ladies and gentlemen, do you really find it logical to blame Ubos, which is under another body, for all the failures that took place in the population census? We also present to them a case whereby the data collected from this census is utilized by bodies such as MOFPED and local governments to plan for the citizens, and that alone gives them the responsibility, the obligation to take part in ensuring that the census takes place smoothly. I'll answer you in a minute. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in this debate, they do not actually give us a body. I do not know what they come as to begin blaming Ubos, but ladies and gentlemen, in this debate, we come as the Uganda Bureau of Statistics to find who is to blame for these failures and to embark on these challenges so that we have a better census 10 years from now. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they come and tell us of poor training. Ubos, yes, we accept that some of these challenges were due to us, but we also say that we need cooperation with other bodies such as local governments, because how do you expect Ubos, which does not have full impetus, to move throughout a country like Uganda? The census is an activity that involves the nation at large, and one semi-autonomous body cannot be solely responsible over such an activity, ladies and gentlemen. Now, they also talk of we are looking for a body that is solely responsible. Now, this brings me again to my main point. The census is an activity that involves the whole nation. So there is nothing like looking for a body that is solely responsible. This needs cooperation between agencies of the government to see that this is successful. Ladies and gentlemen, they come and say, they say, their first speaker clearly said it, blaming Ubos is like, they say blaming Ubos is like blaming the government. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if I can reverse this, that means that blaming the government is like blaming Ubos. Now, they also talk of recruitment. Ladies and gentlemen, also, as our second speaker clearly said it, recruitment was done by local authorities, because as Ubos, we could not do this on our own. We needed assistance from other bodies from other agencies to see that such an activity is successful. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they also talk of sensitization. Yes, as Ubos, we had a mandate to sensitize, but who did we need for assistance to sensitize? That is the Uganda Communications Commission. Now, if sensitization was not there, ladies and gentlemen, can we only blame Ubos for this? Then they come and ask us who is meant to carry out the population census. Good. It is the Ubos that is meant to carry out the population census. But ladies and gentlemen, semi-autonomous, our main argument in this debate is being semi-autonomous, and that alone disqualifies us from having full responsibility. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we call for cooperation, unlike them who actually do not have recommendations of how we can have a better census. They only stress the reason why we need a better census, but they do not give us recommendations. So we cannot solve our problems as a nation if we continuously pin blame on one specific body. So we would rather cooperate so that we take our nation forward. Ladies and gentlemen, they come and tell us, I've already told you about accepting the glitches. Accepting the glitches is not the same as accepting full responsibility over the glitches. So with all our unanswered questions and questions that they did not answer, I think Team Negative does not stand to win this debate. Though Ubos may have the mandate and response, Team Affirmative, does not stand to win this debate. So though Ubos may have the mandate, but having mandate without sole responsibility does not make them accountable for all the failures. With this, I rest my case.
This is the High School Crossfire. We'll be back in a minute.